Right guys, welcome back to the workshop. So in this video I'm going to be continuing the shelving and shallow cabinets above the mitre station. So for those of you that didn't see the previous video where I attempted to make some shelving and shallow cabinets above the mitre station that resulted in a massive fail. So I was using leftover plywood from the mitre station and drawers build, and originally I was going to have vertical columns and I was going to make loads of individual cubby holes, but because I tried to do dados or housing joints on both sides of 12mm ply, it didn't quite work out. So I ended up scrapping the idea. Then I remembered I actually had some salvaged hotel skirting boards, so decided to use that instead. And I'm glad I did, because these shelves look way better than the other ones would have ever done. So the only problem with using salvage materials is you normally have to spend a lot longer prepping it before you can start actually working with it. This had quite a hard coating on, a primer and a top coat, and when you cut the boards it actually chips and comes off in hard chunks. So I didn't want to risk running it through my benchtop planer thicknesser, so I ended up sanding for what seemed like an absolute eternity, and as a result my Henry Hoover gave up the ghost. It got too hot and basically cut out after about 5 minutes of continued use, and that resulted in the workshop looking like a Christmas wonderland. And finally, we're done. Thank God that is done. Oh, I've got to get out of here. But now the cleanup begins. And in the blink of an eye, the workshop is spotless once again. So glad I've got the compressor and a blowgun, because that would be a nightmare to clean up any other way. Right, I'm hoping this is going to balance while I explain where I'm going with this. These are 10 inches in depth. I've cut a dado in both side pieces, which is going to accept a shelf, and I'm going to attach doors along the top to form shallow cabinets. And then rather than do vertical columns, I'm going to add 3 or 4 shelves horizontally, and I was going to just screw them in from the side, but I'd rather cut dados for them to sit in, because it just adds a bit more strength and rigidity to the whole thing. But obviously the shelves are only about 7 inches in depth, which meant if I cut dados in the 10-inch side pieces, there's going to be a part of the dado which is exposed. So what I'm planning on doing is I'm going to cut it at an angle just below where this top shelf goes, and I'm going to take it back to the same depth as the shelves and leave the top part sticking slightly further forward, and then I can cut the dados and this piece will be the same depth as the shelves that I'm putting in, if that makes sense. So the first job I did was take the 2 side pieces and trim them down to the correct depth to match the shelves, and I did that using a combination of the table saw and a circular saw, mainly because I didn't trust myself to cut a straight line with a jigsaw, and then I could use the world's most naff flush cut saw to actually finish the cut off. And yes, I will be buying myself a decent flush cut saw in the near future. Then it was on to the housing joints or dados, whatever you prefer to call them, and I chose to do this on the mitre saw because I just find it much easier than having to set up straight edges and make multiple passes with the router. And if you're careful, They normally come out fairly tight, although if you're using a scrap piece to actually test fit it, make sure you actually use a sanded piece and not a piece with the paint still on it like I did. So a couple of them did actually turn out a little bit on the big side, but as it's only shop furniture, I'm not too worried. Then I decided to dry assemble it all just to make sure it all goes together as I planned. Oh, and there's me opening some imaginary doors. Right, so that's how it's going. I am going to put some trim around the edges and across the front of the shelves, mainly to hide where the housing or dados are, and I think that'll just finish it off nicely. Obviously I'll round over the outer edges. Doors are going up there for the cabinets, and you can see what I meant about bringing it in, so the outside pieces are the same depth as the shelves. Down here I'm going to cut a slot out at the bottom, both sides, and I'm going to box a section in because I want to be able to run a dust pipe or hose from the mitre saw along the back of the workshop. So got to do that. Some of these are a fraction longer than others, so I've got to finesse the lengths a little bit, make sure they're all identical lengths, and then it can kind of be screwed in from the outside. But that's what it's going to look like. Quite pleased with that. So to put it all together, I decided to do the outside of the cabinets or shelves first, and I'm just drilling some pilot holes to prevent the wood from splitting, countersinking the holes, and then driving in some 70mm wood screws. So with the outside assembled, I can now start inserting the shelves and fitting those in exactly the same way. And now you get to listen to a little bit of music while I put the rest of the shelves in. So now I'm cutting a small strip down, which I'm going to put at the bottom, and that is basically going to close in the bottom side of the shelves and also hide the space that I've left for the dust hose to go from the mitre saw along the back of the shelves. And that gets fitted in exactly the same way with 70mm screws. So with the unit assembled, it was time to lift it up and make sure it all fits. And as you can see, I struggled with this bit. It's actually a lot heavier than it looks. But if you look at the lower side of the unit, you'll see where I've actually notched out where the dust hose is going to be hidden behind. But after a brief struggle, I managed to actually get it in position and it all fits as it should. But then I did leave plenty of clearance at the top, because I know that if I'd have measured it to fit exactly below the ceiling, that knowing me, I'd have got it stuck. So for the trim, I'm just using another piece of the skirting board and I'm ripping them down to about 1.5 centimetres or a little under 3/4 of an inch, and I'm going to put them on the front using glue and pins or 18 gauge brad nails. So now I get to talk a little bit about this aluminium protractor that I purchased for working out angles. As you can see, it's as simple as putting it in position, and then depending on whether you're doing 2 mitered corners together or a single piece, you just read off the gauge, adjust your saw to the correct angle, make the cut, and it should fit like a glove. So to do the outer corner, because the leg on the protractor was slightly too long to actually hold it in position, I used a straight bit of timber against the front of the shelves just to bring the protractor forward slightly, and that allowed me to find the correct angle. And as you can see, I need to cut these mitres at bang on 30. So as I hold the pieces in position, you can see just how accurate the protractor makes it. Now, I would normally struggle on something like this because I've never been any good at maths and angles always confuse me. But having the protractor has just been a godsend. So now I've made both the cuts. I'll hold it all up in place, and you can see that even a klutz like me can do fairly clean looking mitres. So as I've said, to attach the trim, I'm just going to be using a thin bead of glue, and I'm going to fire in some 18 gauge 50mm brad nails. And this also gives me a chance to play with my new toy. So for the mitre corners, I'm just using some Starbond CA glue and some spray activator. And for anyone that's interested in purchasing any Starbond products, then feel free to use the code GRUMPY, GRUMPY, and you'll get 10% off. So I've got to say I absolutely love this nail gun, but there is one thing that keeps catching me out. Now on my pneumatic nailer, you could actually press the nose onto the workpiece and you could leave it there for any length of time, and then when you pulled the trigger it'd fire the nail. With the Metabo or a Hikoki nailer, you have to press the trigger within a couple of seconds of pressing the nose or it won't fire. And I keep kind of pressing it in, moving it to get it in the right place, and then go to press the trigger and it doesn't fire. Keeps catching me out. It's not a problem. I just thought I'd point that out, but otherwise love it. And that is the main body of the shelves and cabinets complete. And I am so glad that the first attempt went completely wrong, because this looks so much better. So I think it was meant to be, and it's still made for a good video anyway. So the basic shelving unit is complete now. I have got to prepare the doors. These came off a really old bedroom cabinet, but rather than throw them away, I kept them. I did have to redo the holes where the hinges were. The original hinges were a lot smaller than the ones that I had, so I had to make myself a quick jig and redo the holes slightly larger in order to fit these hinges. And then I'm going to be taking the handle off, and I'm going to be adding these chrome handles, which are the same ones I used on the drawers for my mitre station. So as well as the doors that I need to prep and put on, I also want to make some little boxes or mini drawers for different length screws, and I want to make them so they actually fit in the shelf, and I can just line them up, and then as and when I need them I can just pull the drawer out and use whatever screws I need. But that's all going to be in a future video, so you'll have to wait for that. So just for a laugh, here's a clip of me actually putting the glue on the wrong side of the trim. So once again, I want to thank you for taking the time to watch the video. I do appreciate each and every one of you that have subscribed to the channel and support it by watching the videos and leaving comments. It really does mean a lot to me, and it encourages me to keep making the videos. I might not be the best woodworker on YouTube. In fact, I'm a long way from that, but I do enjoy making stuff and having a go, and I think that's the most important thing, is having fun. So thanks for watching. If it's your first time here and you're not already subscribed to the channel and you like general DIY, woodworking or tool reviews, then why not consider subscribing? It doesn't cost anything after all, it's free, and all you've got to do is click that button, and if you click the little bell icon, you'll be notified of all my future videos. So till the next video, stay safe and you will see me in the next video. Cheers for watching, guys.